Councillor Beck.
Yes, thank you. I was just really going to respond to Councillor Ayer's point earlier, that in fact there is quite a lot of work. Both there is a LGNZ national remit that got adopted, which I reported on earlier, in order that we are central government to standardise the way in which we measure CO2 and other measures that we are holding ourselves to account to, rather than everybody reinventing the wheel and measuring things in a different way, choosing what's in, what's out, etc. So that's quite useful work. And as Jim's referred to, our regional council is also leading some work so that at least at a district level, again, we are, when we do our stock takes, when we do our reporting, it's apples with apples. And it is quite complicated. We know there's a lot of coal being burnt at Huntly, for example. That's not just for the benefit of the Waikato district, that's a national issue. So things like that have to be figured in correctly, so that we measure the things that we really have an ability to influence. But that does include trying to promote good behaviour by all the people and businesses within the district. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sedgwick.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions. The first one being, in the executive summary, you talk about savings that have been made through people working remotely. I don't need to know the quantum, but have we as a council considered the impact that would have on people's own personal energy bills? So that's one point. I don't know if you want to answer that, and then I'll move to the next one.
Sure. Through you, Madam Chair, we did talk with our energy manager about that, and that is something that eventually we can start picking up as our Scope 2 emissions, which is, it's not council directly, but it's a result of council work, so to speak. But yeah, it's hard to say, but if people are working from home and they've got their computer and their light switch on, they're possibly more efficient than in a building where all the lights are on, and it depends on the usage of the building. So it is a bit complicated. It's a good question. I don't 100% know the answer for sure.
Yeah, so you're taking a saving, or notionally you're taking a saving, but there's actually a usage and a cost in another part. Secondly, looking as a COVID question, looking at your report, a lot of it is review, determine, assess. So am I correct in assuming that there really has been no impact on your progress from a COVID perspective?
Sorry, through you, Madam Chair, the question is, has there been progress in the past 8 months, or from a COVID perspective? I'm not.
No. Has the lockdown and has COVID impacted your progress?
I don't believe so in a material way. Certainly not this most recent lockdown, and then the other lockdown was prior to getting this the policy and action plan in place. So no, all the discussions that we've been, we've just had the discussions online basically.
Okay, and just finally on page 37, where you talk about roading resilience and the risk, how confident are you that the budget that we have put aside is sufficient? I know you call it a risk, but I don't really see an answer. So how's that been addressed?
Sorry, that's page 27, is it, Councillor?
37.
Oh, 37.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
507.
If I can add a comment there, I suspect that 800,000 is a nominal amount. The reality is we know that if we have a major landslide on a section of road that needs a lot of geotech work, etc., that budget won't go far at all. So it is a nominal amount. And I suppose looking forward, we need to get ourselves to a position of saying, with increasing extreme weather events, etc., do we need to build up a bigger emergency fund on top of that?
And that's something that we've covered. I think what has sparked my interest in that is there's no forecast increase for the next 10-year period. So that is a risk that needs to be addressed, I believe. Thank you.
Roger, I noticed you wanted to say something on the previous question. Do you still want to speak to that?
So that was around staff
Yes.
and their home power bills.
Yes.
So slight different tangent from Councillor Sedgwick's question, which was, is it false accounting saying you're saving when actually it's being used elsewhere? What I was going to add is the executive team have actually talked about the well-being of staff and their financial ability to cover that. And so that there has been a lot of discussion around, are the benefits of being able to work from home greater, the same, or less than the additional costs that it might incur being at home, using your own power, etc. And we've pretty much landed that there is enough benefit there for staff in terms of being able to balance their lives, doing other things in their spare time, that we don't believe there's any need to recompense staff for energy usage at their homes.
Can I just
Thank
jump in
you.
there as well, please?
I'll have you down as a speaker. Is it to do with this topic?
Yeah, absolutely. That point, I get the IRD business news, and IRD has basically got made it available to all people in this position working from home to make a claim without showing receipts, blah, blah, blah. So office expenditure, power and all that sort of thing. So perhaps the finance team could do some work and find out from IRD, and the staff could claim that at the end of the financial year when doing tax returns. So whilst it may not be a direct payment, they could assist in offsetting the costs.
Alison, do you want to comment?
Is she on yet?
Sorry, through you, Madam Chair, we did this work last lockdown period, so the IRD rules haven't adjusted since then. And at that time, we allowed staff to opt into a $400 payment for them to set their workstations up from home. We did not support ongoing payments, so that was a significant investment of council. We did not support ongoing payments because, of course, that's ratepayer funds, and there are, as Roger talked about, there are benefits to people working from home, so they have lowered petrol costs, all the rest of it. So when we did the workings at that time, we believed the most advantageous thing for the individuals involved was to give them the $400 tax-free allowance for them to set up a home office space.
Okay, thanks for that, Alison. I have some speakers, Councillor Eyre, Councillor Smith, if you wish to speak again after her, and then Councillor Wollerton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just on page 32, the suggestion about council moving into the forestry planting space. I think that needs to be really, really carefully thought through. On two levels, I'm concerned about that. Firstly, obviously, as the contributions that our rural landowners make to the economy, and also the loss of highly productive beef and sheep properties to forestry is concerning on a national scale. I would much rather consider working with our partners with conservation lots and maybe schools that have plantings in their space, rather than actually looking into going into mass forestry. I just want to raise that as a bit of a red flag for future consideration and discussion.
Comment on that through you, Madam Chair. Yeah, absolutely agree with that. And the prioritization in this action plan is unchanged from when it was adopted in December. So that is shown as category, one of the lower categories, which is improvement opportunity. And the update is that the action coordinator will look into this, but the comments do point out that even the benefits in terms of the costs and benefits are variable. So we'll take that comment on board. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for that. Councillor Smith.
Yeah, can I just seek clarity, please, on a comment that was made in relation to the something that Councillor Sedgwick brought up, 800,000, and Roger commented on it for the emergency works. My understanding is, and I've been banging on about this for years, is that we're trying to get to a $5 million fund, and with the LTP, we did put some money into that emergency fund. I see Alison's nodding her head. And why aren't we making progress? Because we did have a goal of reaching at least 5 million in that area. So perhaps Alison could give some explanation on whether I misunderstood what was said.
Through you, Madam Chair, no, Councillor Smith, you are correct that we are building that fund over time to an amount of, I think it's 5 million is the correct number.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Woollerton, please.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, again, along from Councillor Ayres' point of view, comments, the stock, we seem to have a big drive against stock and in our district. Now, it's going to put council offside with a lot of the ratepayers because we are a rural district. And we just need to be aware that that's where we get a lot of our income through, or some income, and just we don't want to be putting those people, get them offside. And there's a big push overseas with regeneration and the movement, and a lot of them are using stock with their cropping, so they're actually using stock and regeneration, and so that's sort of going directly against what we're saying with our emissions. And so we need to be looking at the full cycle rather than just pinpointing one particular area and seeing the negative of it. There's a lot of benefits with stock. And that also, page 32, we're going about talking about food and canteens, everything. That's I think me and Alan brought it up one other time. That's a lot of that's personal choices. I don't believe that's in the scope of climate change, is what we eat and what we do. That's something that, if people want to drink Coke, good or bad, that's their decision. That maybe if you want to do that, I believe that's fine, but not in this area. I don't believe this is the right vehicle for it. And you mentioned page 30, you talk about vehicles idling and everything. And the newer vehicles, that's quite common, where vehicles idle down when they're not being used, especially the hydraulic pumps and things. And and some of them switch off. So again, that technology is there and it's readily available. So maybe it's a newer vehicles. So it would be very easy to specify that if you wish to. And that's probably enough. My question is when we look at it, can we just make sure that we're looking at the full circle, not just looking at one aspect of climate change? Because there's often there's pros and cons on everything. Like trees are good, but they do have their issues with soil and things like that. So that'd be my question. If we could just look at the full circle, please.
Through you, Madam Chair, absolutely. Those are some good points. The Climate Action Coordinator will be able to more fully analyze, the whole life cycle of something like stock and look at the benefits as well as the emissions cost. And also around personal choice, absolutely. The cafeteria, I don't expect the cafeteria is ever going to withdraw certain options. But there are things like, the butter went from being in little individual plastic containers where you peel the foil and throw it away to now there's a pat of butter that people use, and people still have butter. And there may have been complaints, but in generally I've heard positive. So, it's those sort of small things that, that won't put everyone offside, I think, that we're looking for. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Councillor Walton. Mrs. Moana Tufangai.
Sure, thank you. Just with regard to page 28 and the it's biodiversity and public land, I couldn't quite see where there was anything about the retention, protection, and maybe expansion of wetlands. I think it'd be quite good to have, quite important actually, to have something that refers to wetlands and the protection of wetlands.
Through you, Madam Chair, thank you for that comment, Mrs. Moana Tufangai. It should be in there, and I can't tell you if or where exactly it is, but I know it's meant to be encompassed in there because of the very important role that wetlands have as carbon storage, as well as their biodiversity benefits. So we'll. So did you say page 29? I was
28.
28, I see.
28, sorry. It's 3100 biodiversity and public land, but
yeah, that's right.
That whole thing about wetlands, protection of wetlands. Given that, there's a Ramsar site within the Waikato district boundaries, it's probably important to recognise that as well.
Okay, I'll note that, thank you. And also just a note that the conservation strategy, which is under review, will also highlight the importance of wetlands, I'm sure. Thank you.
All right. Now, Councillor Wallerton, is this another question?
Yes, this is actually a question this time. So something that's not in there at all is just the impact tourism has, and that's quite big. People traveling through just with vehicles and things like that. And I was just wondering if you'd consider the impact tourism has on climate change, please.
Through you, Madam Chair. You know, that's a good question. It does get into this sort of the accounting of carbon, you know, and do we bear the carbon burden in terms of responsibility for people who come into our district as tourists and, you know, and emit carbon through their cars, et cetera. I'm not sure at the moment if when we do the accounting for the district or when our energy advisor does that, if they're looking at residents only or they're looking at visitors as well, but they have to be accounted for somewhere. And I guess, I just don't know whether it's at the point of emission or whether they're sort of accounted for at the border and it all goes to Auckland Airport. It's probably spread across the country. So it is something I suppose that when we're talking about the community and the ways that we can encourage community emissions reductions, I think things like making it easy for tourists to put their rubbish in the right place, and making it easier for our tourists to walk where they need to go or take public transport. Those are the sorts of things that can benefit our emissions as a whole, including the tourist sector. But then, of course, the businesses themselves they are quite savvy, obviously, to be in the tourism market already, and they've had to be quite adaptable with COVID and all the changes in the tourism market anyway. This is another challenge, but it's also probably another opportunity that tourism operators have already been embracing. I mean, Air New Zealand has been carbon neutral or better for years, and I suppose a lot of the sectors following that lead.
And perhaps Jason Dawson might have a comment on that later. Just a heads up, Jason, if you can think of something you need to add to that. I'll take two more questions, Councillor Thompson, then Councillor Church, and then we'll move on.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Really to Councillor Wallerton's point, I suppose that's where the waste minimisation, you know, the impact outside of that carbon sinking, our waste minimisation plans moving forward need to be really robust. Then people are encouraged, whether they're visitors or locals, if say they're coming to Raglan, about what sort of things that they shouldn't be using their reusables, all of those sorts of things. So I think our messaging around supporting communities and waste minimisation, I think would be really great for offsetting some of that visitor impact. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Church.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think one of the big issues that Waikato District Council have got, and I guess we need to have a bit more clarity as we go on with measuring, is that we have a lot of landfills in the Waikato District where the bulk of that landfill is coming out of other regions, particularly Auckland. But then, because it's in our district, then it's actually quantified as ours. And the second part is particularly with our northern waste transfer station, where I think the numbers are something like 95 or 98% of that fill is actually not in Waikato District Council, but out of Auckland. So, but then because it's in our district, then we're quantifying on our area. So really just, I wanted to, in the future, have some clarity around how do we measure our progress while being a recipient to other people's waste. Yeah. So I just wanted to know if there's any work that will be done in those spaces around, you know, clarifying so that we really do get some numbers around how we do progress it, because we are really focused on, you know, improving what we're doing in our district.
Those all landfills.
Correct.
Through you, Madam Chair. Again, that's an accounting issue, and I believe it is. You know, we do wear that emissions cost by hosting those landfills, and it's a false savings to sort of shift it over the border and say, oh, look what we've done. You know, we could have done the same thing in terms of talking about the transfer of some responsibilities to water care. But in the reality is, really for the integrity of the process, we've moved our base year forward to the year after the water care transfer. Otherwise, we're showing that we've magically made all these emissions disappear because we no longer because we no longer run wastewater treatment plants, water plants, et cetera. So yeah, it's really important to get that, not just the accounting right, but the messaging right, so that we're not claiming victories that aren't ours, and at the same time we're not shouldering the shame or the blame of things that are very hard for us to control.
Yes, great.
Okay, thanks everybody. I think that's been a really good discussion, and thank you, Jim, for your answers and consideration of the points raised. We'll move on now to page 40, and I'd like to invite Jason Dawson to turn on his video if he'd like to do that. Good morning, Jason. Thank you for waiting for us to finish that report, and would you like to speak to your paper?
Sure. I was going to share a presentation, but I think considering we're on Zoom, it's just easy just to talk some of the highlights for the report. First up, I would just like to respond to Councillor Willerton's query around tourism tracking for carbon, given your climate action plan. So look, some really good points there raised. So what we are doing at the moment is last year we launched a regenerative tourism program for tourism operators within the Waikato region, which includes your district. At the moment, we are looking at accounting for their emissions at this stage so that then they can go on the journey of obviously becoming carbon neutral or hopefully carbon positive, which a number of our operators in Waitomo already have achieved. So it will be at an operator-based level in the experience. For the traveller, though, when they are travelling throughout the region, it will have to be captured by them, but there will be offsets that we are looking to establish with our operators like Sanctuary Mountain Maungatautari and a couple of other carbon sinks that we have here, like Waitakaruru, Arboretum. They're actually a carbon sink as well. So we can offer some opportunities for the individual traveller. Their flights will be offset through the Air New Zealand carbon emissions program. And then when they travel throughout our region, at least, we will have the opportunity for them to actually reduce, remove, offset, and then hopefully contribute back in an active way to reducing our carbon here in the Waikato. And look, Councillor Thompson talked about waste minimisation in Raglan. That is something that we have obviously been supportive of as a tourism industry, and the Raglan Naturally Plan, which talks a lot around, for us in the visitor plan side, making sure that we stick true to the ethos of Raglan by offering cycling and pedestrian what we call transport modes rather than and electric, rather than actually promoting taxi services and other types of emissions. So for us, we have worked at individual community levels to align to your neighbourhood plans, and for Raglan, the Raglan Naturally Plan as well. Ka pai. So look, straight into, I'll just take our report as read. We won't go page by page, because obviously COVID is top of mind right now, but I would say up until COVID hit, Waikato District had rebounded very well. So let me just quickly go to some of the key points in your report. So look, for us as a region, we have had an 11% increase of visitor expenditure on last year. Now, remember, last year was our year of lockdowns. So for us, that wasn't a good baseline. But based on the previous year, we are down. So 2019 is our baseline as a region. We are down around 185 million. So still a big drop for us. But on the rebound side, domestic has always been strong, and we have managed to bounce back quite strongly as well, particularly for the district. During all these lockdowns, we have now achieved the second largest region for business events and conferences. A lot of that has been driven by the Auckland continued lockdown. So whenever Auckland's lockdown, conferences, meetings and exhibitions come out and they come into the Waikato. But we have managed to hold our domestic visitor expenditure here in the region at fourth largest domestic visitor destination for the country. And our commercial guest nights have also bounced back. But as you know, in Hamilton particularly, we have 3 managed isolation facilities, and a number of our motels are currently being used for emergency housing. So it is kind of, it's a double-edged sword. Our hotels are all full because we have a lack of capacity, and our motels are obviously full as well, but we are now seeing a big increase, for example, again in Airbnb, particularly in our main urban centres. With regards to, I'm just quickly looking at some of the highlights, with regards to our media and travel trade. So although our borders have remained closed, we have still been hosting media across our region. You would have seen we had a Raglan feature for the Kia Ora magazine recently, and we've managed to still host domestic media here. Stuff, New Zealand Herald Travel, Cuisine Magazine, House and Garden. We're just crossing all demographics now to attract visitors back to the Waikato. We also have managed to train around 1,200 travel agents virtually like this. Unfortunately, we did a live famil and a live tour of Geelong tea, where actually we had already pre-sent Geelong tea bags, as well as a few of some Raglan chocolate items and a few other tasters for travel agents around the world. That was one of our largest webinars. We had 500 people online from Australia through to the US and Europe, where people were actually live tours of Geelong while they were tasting the tea in the comfort and safety of their home, as well as enjoying some great cheeky Raglan chocolates. So we're still managing to train travel agents offshore because the market demand is still strong. Despite everything we've been through as a country, we are still seen as a safe destination. We are still seen as a country that has tackled COVID, and travellers want to return back to our country. So ka pai everyone. The team of 5 million is obviously doing a really good job at also portraying that reputation in the international market as well. For Waikato District particularly, look, your annual visitor expenditure has bounced back very well. So in 2019, you were at 65 million. 2020, we took a hit at 59 million. But this year, you've bounced to 69 million as of the end of June. So well done, Waikato. It's a 14% increase on your previous visitor expenditure into the district. And again, completely driven by domestic. So we all know as soon as lockdowns open, they cross the Bombays back into Tuakau, Mercer and Pocono to Kowhata, and they're going out onto the West Coast beaches. So we're definitely seeing the desire from Aucklanders after each lockdown to come back into the district to have a weekend or even just have a day trip back into the district. So well done. Our commercial accommodation we've talked about has been going well. So for Waikato District, your average length of stay is around 1.6 nights, resulting in around 188,000 visitor nights throughout your district for July to June this year. So again, huge growth. Obviously, we see big spikes in Raglan during our summer period and outside of lockdowns, and we're definitely seeing what we call seasonality start to even out for Raglan as well, where it's been just as busy sometimes on the weekends in winter than what we've normally seen across the district. And look, just lastly, just talking about some of the success we have had with our operators. Look, we have lost 4 operators out of 283 through COVID. I'm taking that as a win. Those businesses have decided to what I call close with dignity or hibernate. We've managed to access a lot of government funding from the government this year as well. We've launched the Regional Events Fund, which is a 3.75 million regional events fund to get new events established across the region over the next 4 years to drive visitation. We've managed to attract 700,000 into our organisation from the government over this year to develop an ambassador program for Waikato District, which we will be launching at the end of December, as well as reviewing a lot of our touring routes and developing finally our West Coast journey with Taranaki. So that's a journey that will start off State Highway 1, head out towards Port Waikato and actually take in the West Coast completely down into Taranaki and then continue down onto the Surf Highway, plus a number of other touring routes we are looking with Rotorua, Ruapehu and with Auckland. And look, and one of our big wins for the district as well has been our joint marketing campaign with Auckland for the first time, getting Auckland to take a second look at our region, cross the border and spend more within the district as well. And lastly, look, I have talked about Kia Ora and a number of other magazines that we have managed to feature the Waikato District over the past 6 to 8 months, which has been significant. And then lastly, I just wanted to thank you all for your support. Look, during this COVID lockdown, of course, all our businesses are closed in tourism. But what we are doing is we stood up Mighty Local again, mightylocal.co.nz, where we do list all businesses that have been able to operate at alert level 4. We're now promoting businesses at alert level 3. And as of 4 o'clock today, we will find out what other businesses potentially we might be able to promote to get more Waikato residents to spend and buy local during lockdown. So thank you guys for your support and happy to take some questions.
Thank you, Jason. Yes, it has been, there's some positives we can take out of the negatives, I'm sure. So yes. Are there any questions of Jason? Councillor Church.
Thank you, thank you, Madam Chair. Firstly, Jason, I've been very impressed with the work that you and your team have been doing. I think that you've been really trying to not just hit the jewels of the crown. I mean, we love Raglan and all the things around there, but you talk about even the Castaways, Mercer. You're talking about the Hakramatas and obviously the obvious ones, but a lot of the smaller places, because obviously systemically for Waikato District Council, we've been a thoroughfare more than a destination, particularly with the Auckland 1.6 million people on the whole Waikato's doorstep, right? So I'm really inspired by this work that you're doing, and I think that more relationship with that 1.6 million people north will be helpful. What my question for you is, how can, once we're out of this COVID lockdown, how can you perhaps support particularly those other businesses that are not on people's radars, maybe in a webinar or information, to expand and get better at promoting themselves or through you?
Yes.
Being a bit more clever, because you've got a lot of experience, or you've got a lot of experienced operators who do this really well. How we can sort of segue and piggyback on that maybe set up some even online stuff to help inspire some of the local businesses to do better. And also, things like those group work with things like the Franklin Tourism Group, for example, So I really would value your experience and expertise and input into that either now or later.
Yeah, no, excellent question. So we did launch we had 80,000 that we invested into what we call lifting industry capability this last financial year. We're still running those programs. So that was half-day workshops on different topics, from media training through to marketing on a shoestring budget. Of course, digital capability, which is something that we always continually work with right now. And to be honest, what we have managed to capture is a lot of the businesses that have undertaken digital capability workshops, and what we've seen with lockdown is their Facebook posts, their Google My Business listings still say they're open. So we've captured all of those businesses again. A lot of them are not traditional businesses we would work with, but they are people like the Thai restaurant in Huntly, through to the ice cream shop in Pocono. These are businesses that really should be making sure that their digital front door is still updated regularly, and potentially bookings and delivery services can happen through that service. So look, we've captured those businesses to do follow-up. The good thing is also we have attracted more funding from government this year to do more industry capability building, such as marketing. And we're also going to be appointing someone to be on the road and provide one-on-one industry marketing advice. So they're going to be based within their businesses. As we know, people are busy people, they're family-run businesses normally. They don't have time to do the mahi or the marketing. So for us, by putting someone out on the road for 12 months, to actually go into those businesses and help them. So yes, we will be providing some additional support for them as well.
Great. And just, I guess I'll find it offline, but I'd appreciate if there's some initiatives in our areas that we kind of maybe get a link to them, so that we can kind of help and promote and perhaps find some more people that need that support. Yeah, thank you.
Sure thing.
Thanks, Jason. So I have Councillor Begg and then Councillor Smith.
Yeah, thank you, Jason. I think one of the things that went well was trying to get around the accommodation shortage for field days, for example, with that rather innovative use of camper vans at Claudelands and that sort of thing. I guess that continues to be an issue for us, and I note that Rotorua have now come out and said, no more MIQ, please, government, go somewhere else. Where are we at in that space, and to what extent will the continued hosting, let's call it that, of MIQ facilities actually prove a roadblock to domestic tourism?
Yeah, so look, it is our number one challenge as a region. As you all know, we are, I've talked about this many times, we were already limited with hotel inventory before we had COVID. We were, our region is ranked 9th with regards to hotel inventory, and we're the 4th largest city and the 4th largest domestic visitor destination. So it is a continual issue for us. For MIQs, look, 2 of our MIQs, the Ibis Tainui and Jet Park hotels, are now designated to process RES workers. So that's really important for us. Even though we're not taking back returning New Zealanders, we are trying to process now what I call all the essential skilled workers that we need back in our workforce. So I'm happy for our hotels to still continue that distinction potentially. may be looking to be reviewed with their contract in April or May next year. So fingers crossed, because we do want to get at least one hotel back. But we are working at the moment with 3 hotel developers because the market has moved so significantly for us as a region. Again, it won't happen overnight, but for us to be able to get some stake in the grounds anyway, to get a few more hotels established in the region to help us continue, because even though it was innovative for us to use camper vans for field days, it's not really putting our best foot forward as a region. So again, we've got world-class facilities here, as you all know. We just want to make sure people also have a world-class accommodation experience as well. So we're still working on the hotel propositions. So not just the live leads, we are also going into the investment market soon around hotels. And again, across our region, not just in Hamilton, we're looking for smaller size, mid-size hotels peppered around our region. And obviously you all know the population growth in North Waikato for us. So anything else that we could try and see within that part of the district would be great.
Thank you. Councillor Smith?
Thank you. Axel's probably covered some of what I was going to touch on. And so far as we've had a JP conference that has had to be cancelled because we got the COVID. And secondly, when we tried to rebook for the Upper North Island, and we had to restrict it to 40 maximum because of the lack of, we can't rebook because everyone else is trying to jump in. So you've sort of said the distinction will be available come April, maybe, if they don't renew. So is there no real opportunities in the short term to change anything in relation to the accommodation situation?
At this stage, no. Look, it's purely government-led, and even though Rotorua are saying we don't want another MIQ, it's not actually the decision of the community. It's based on a number of factors for cities to host an MIQ, and that's based on having a good tertiary hospital. So if people need to be transferred out of MIQs to hospital intensive care, then we are close for that. So look, as we all know, we have one of the largest tertiary hospitals for the Upper North Island that process a number of those services. So that's a key decision for the government to be here and in Rotorua. And also for hotels, look, hotels, even though for us, if we went back to open market, we would be making some very good revenue for those hotels. In places like Rotorua, we wouldn't be seeing those numbers again because they were mainly an international destination. So what we're seeing is, look, the hotel owners are happy with being MIQs as well. They're getting a number of upgrades to their infrastructure through CCTV, through ventilation and air conditioning that normally they would not have done. But we are waiting and tracking that hopefully one of them at least will return to open market next year. And then we will have some new developments underway. So Quest Apartments is probably the best lead right now. They're looking at developing potentially 2 to 4 new properties across the region. And that kind of fits our business profile and our events profile as well. So to have Quest having more properties in our region is a good thing.
Thank you.
Councillor Lynch.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jason, I don't know if you're aware, but Huntly Speedway are going to have their biggest season in the country, I believe, this year. And they can't get any accommodation anywhere in the Waikato. So they're wanting to get consent to be able to have hundreds of camper vans here in Huntly. And that it's going to be quite massive.
Yeah, and unfortunately that is what we are seeing. So we're seeing obviously the growth with Motorhome and Caravan Association members who we work with quite closely. Even though it's not good for events, it does work. And we have managed to do a number of events. We did the running of the sheep for the last 2 years, utilising camper vans as well. So again, for some events, camper vans do work. But what we probably will see more is, even though we can grow our meeting space in the region when we can get it again, it's mainly going to be the day trip market will be quite significant for our meetings going forward until we get more innovative ways of actually using camper vans. But good to know. I actually didn't know that was going to be the biggest season for Huntly Speedway, so I've noted that down.
It would be a good idea if you got in contact with Red Wooten.
Absolutely. Look, we can provide some support for them too.
They've got some really big plans ready.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, last question, Councillor Woollerton.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I'm always impressed and I always look forward to your talks and the information that's coming through. So thank you, Jason. probably similar to what Councillor Beck was talking about, is but more along the emergency housing. Is a lot politer than what I had written down. So is that counted in the accommodation, or is it separated out, or is that you can't differentiate with it? And how's that impacting on the district, please?
Yes, so look, that is it's not counted in our commercial accommodation data. So we do remove emergency housing as well as the MIQ facilities. So that is a good growth trend for Waikato district. For your district particularly, look, it's not as impacted as we are seeing probably Hamilton as being the one that's been the most impacted with regards to emergency housing use. We still have quite a lot of our accommodation still on open market in the district, which is great. And we definitely have a lot of B&Bs still operational as well, only operating as on open market. And we have seen the growth again of Airbnb. But again, we haven't seen them as continual, what we call revenue earners. These are still people just listing bedrooms or homes during the off season, just to try and get some people in to make a bit of income rather than a 24/7 Airbnb operation. So overall, look, your district at this stage hasn't been as impacted as we have seen in other cities.
Thank you.
So, Jason, thanks so much for attending our Zoom meeting. And as usual, we always appreciate seeing you and hearing from you. So have a good week, and we'll see you next time.
You too. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. So moving on, people, to page 65, we have a report from Dr. Maggie Hong, who I believe is, I can see her there. Would you like to, are you speaking to this, Maggie?
Yeah, Madam Chair, can I introduce Maggie for those of the councillors who haven't met her as yet? So, Dr. Maggie Hong is an experienced economist. She's held various roles, including the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet, also with the New Zealand Manufacturers and Exporters Association, and also Ag Research, amongst the roles that she has filled in the past. She joined our growth and analytics team in May this year, and she reports to Will Gauntlet. So Maggie obviously brings a lot of skills and experience in economic analysis, which provides us as council with considerable expertise and capability with regards to understanding growth and the implications of growth in the district. And I think the report you're about to you've read, and the overview that Maggie is about to provide bears testimony to that. So happy to hand over to Maggie, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Yes, thanks, Michelle. Welcome, Maggie. There's a mute button somewhere.
Sorry about that. Hi everyone, good morning, councillors and chairs. So I'm presenting today a paper on the current growth of the Waikato district. So as you may be aware, currently our district is following a growth path using the Waikato University of Waikato's 2020 forecasting. So generally the forecasting projects 3 different trends. That's the low, median, high, and currently we are following the median trend. And what I'm proposing through this paper is to actually moving towards using the Waikato University's 2021 projection, in which instead of using the median growth, we'll be adopting the high trend. That is a collective decision made by Future Proof Partners in the beginning of this year as a part of a household business assessment 2021. Then instead of we're going to adopt the high growth projection. And with the difference between the two population projections is actually very minimal. So I think it's very wise for us to actually adopt the common projected path suggested by the Future Proof Partners. And in terms of household projection, the household projection is actually slightly lower than previous year, but it's mainly due to the update of the 2018 census, the small number of single person households. And it's very interesting how the population projection and the household projection is on the similar path as the previous one, so we shouldn't be having any major concerns. And by adopting the high projection as similar as the Future Proof Partners, we are probably in a better position to actually monitor the cross-boundary growth as well. Happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Maggie. Yes, Councillor Sedgwick.
Thank you very much. I find these reports incredibly interesting, and I do like your report. I'm suffering from lies, and damn statistics, I think, here. Can you help me understand why, looking at pardon me, page 68 in our agenda, which is your figure 3, population by town and village, there are some quite significant anomalies between the medium and the high population, where we see downturns in areas that I wouldn't have expected to see downturns, and then very large upswings. So, for example, Pocono with a downturn, which you refer to Kowhara with an upturn, and a lot of places like Mercer sitting, really doing nothing at all. Can you help me understand, how does this happen?
I think it's because when you're looking at population projections, there are 3 main components. There's the general ones, there's like birth and death, also migration. So I think the downturns, because this new projection actually take into account the COVID effects. So we'll probably like to see at less people are migrating from Auckland to like close area like Pocono, you know, and obviously it's not like a strict reduction, you know, but then that's probably one of the reasons. And similarly, like because we in the projection, the figure 3, when we're looking at it, there are significant growth. We are projecting around Hamilton areas, like the Hamilton Park, which is the area around, and the Horsham Downs. So it's probably just due to the modelling method they applied, as well as the assumptions. By updating to a new set of assumptions, that's what they came up with.
Right. So you have an area like Whata on a medium growth assumption of about 5,000, on a high growth assumption dropping down a couple of thousand out of that. So, and yet it could be perceived as a proximity to Hamilton. So I think I'm really, really grateful for the report. I find it really interesting. And as always, I think there's more questions than answers come out of population projections. So thank you very much.
Yeah, I just want to make an additional comment. So these projections shouldn't take them as the predictions. They are models. Yeah. So we'll be constantly monitoring what's going on with the actual growth of the population as well as the household population. Yeah. So there's no great concern around what exactly number is applied to the different individual towns and villages. So there's more important about overall trends, and we are consistent with all other people who are using this type of projection.
Right. Thank you.
Okay. Just to add to what Maggie just said, so as part of our household and business capacity assessment, which we've done at a sub-regional level with the future group partners, so Maggie will be helping us monitor the uptake of business and residential land in the process, and we'll be providing regular reports to you during the course of the year.
That's good to know, Michelle. Actually, I was wondering with the actuals that are being turned, and especially after the decisions of the district plan, things may change. So It was good to know we're having regular updates. So I have 3 speakers, Councillor Wallerton, then Beck, then Thompson. So Councillor Wallerton first, then Lynch.
I'm happy to go in front of Councillor Beck. It's not often I get that opportunity, but that's good. So it's probably similar graphs to what Councillor Sedgwick was talking about. Just looking at the yellow, I realise it's a 20-year gap, but it seems to be more than double the ones before, and I'm just sort of surprised that it's not just the exponential growth that it is. And obviously, it's going to look into the future. There's going to be a lot of houses to be built. Am I correct in my assumptions? And I'm just wondering why, if there's any idea why there's a sudden jump in that period, please.
Obviously, you pointed out, Councillor Woodson, it's a longer period, and because of the current the COVID assumptions and the growth like to be substituted, And once the border opens up, we're expecting higher number of migrations, and from internationally as well as domestically. So that's why probably they probably shift a bit of growth from the current period to the future periods. And that's probably one of the main reasons why for that.
Okay, no, that's good. Thank you.
Councillor Beck.
Thank you. Always happy to follow the cow's name. Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Yeah, so interesting report, and I think Dr. Hong, that like Councillor Sedgwick, there's lots of ones that I've disagreed with at the individual level, but actually that's kind of not the point. It's a model, and I think the most important point is that we do stay in line with the future-proof partnership adoption of this model, because that means that we're going to be talking apples with all the other people who are, working with us to metro-spatially plan this whole area. So I'm happy on that basis that we make the shift. It actually, I expected it should have had a bigger impact. It doesn't seem to, which kind of makes a bit of a mockery of such a dramatic change of wording from high to medium. Are you confident? If I can ask that way, the degree of confidence you have in something that moves from the middle category to the high category and yet seems to have very little actual effect. Are you happy with that as a model, or were you a bit surprised?
I'm very confident with the methodology supplied by the University of Waikato. So that's one thing. And also there's no real concern about shifting from median to high, and we're actually seeing a smaller jump or actually a decrease. There's no relevance really comparing. It's really like comparing apple and with pears, is what you say. It's two different set of models with slightly different assumptions. That's what result of difference. And potentially, if like in some extreme circumstance, you could have low actually higher than high projections if there was significant economic shocks.
And Councillor Thompson.
Kia ora. Thank you, Madam Chair. Kia ora, Maggie. Nice to see your face. Thank you for your report. Actually, it was just more a typo that I was looking at, because I got a bit of a fright on page 68 for Raglan. It went from 5,834 and then jumped to 9,522. But I realised that Raglan and Pōkeno have been put together rather than Raglan with Raglan. So maybe that could just correct that little mistake, but that's all I was going to say. So thank you for your report.
Sorry, can you just remind me of the page number? So
page 68, down the bottom where it says Raglan, it's got the projections then. On the other side, it goes up to 9,500, but I realised that it's Raglan Pōkeno, and then below that is Pōkeno Raglan. So it might, if you weren't looking,
that's right. I will double check that.
Thank you.
All of them are pretty much different on the other side there.
Yeah, there's a mix of order.
They don't correlate straight across anyway.
Oh yeah, alignment.
Yeah, it's because it's ordered by it's ordered by the size of
the size. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that clarity. So Councillor Lynch is next, and then Anton Marae.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm very hesitant about this report. We're basing a lot on information that I don't really feel is accurate. I have questions about the projections, but one of the statements that you make, Maggie, which is 100%, on page 69, where you've got while the difference may be tolerable in the short term, household numbers projected between the two scenarios differ by 6,500 in the long term, which can have significant policy and planning implications for the wider district. For example, infrastructure investment decisions are made based on growth demands, and inaccurate estimation of household demands will lead to inefficient allocation of resources and hinder future growth. So that's quite it's quite a powerful statement, and it's so common sense. You're quite right, but we're expected to make a decision on this report on quite a few inaccuracies.
sorry, you're cutting out a little bit, might be my internet connections. So I just want to explain, regardless what modelling or forecasting methodology we use, we're always going to be facing some sort of inaccuracy. As I said previously, predictions are not predictions of the future. So what we can do is basically use the most robust methodologies we currently have and continuous monitoring the future trends. Obviously, when we set out the long-term plans, we will always have contingencies. At the same time, every year we have a planning process. If there's significant deviation from the current trend predicted, we will we should try to correct that. So in the long term, there should be minimal impact. And because in the short term, the difference between what's forecasted at the moment and what's previously forecast wasn't that huge, we should rely on the future decision makers and the future projection, the future team to actually correct any deviations.
Yes, so effectively it's a model that will be monitored and adjusted as needed. So are you happy with that, Councillor Lynch?
Yes, but we have to make a decision today on which option we go with. And so, yeah, I find that quite difficult.
Yeah, bearing in mind it's just a guide and there's little difference between both, to be fair. But I have some experts wanting to speak, which might be able to help us, Councillor. Anton and then Michelle.
I just want to circle back a little bit to what Maggie was talking about and the question from Councillor Beck on the difference between the high and the medium. So if you recall, in 2020 we had a University of Waikato did a new set of projections, and it was very shortly after the effects of the COVID, and they had some assumptions made on the migration patterns, and they applied that to the regional model. And one of the sort of slightly unexpected outcomes from that series of modelling was that the Waikato district wasn't as severely affected as by a lower and only an internal migration that was proposed by Dr. Michael Cameron. And the 2020 projection came out quite a bit stronger in the medium range for the Waikato district relative to Hamilton and Waipa. Their medium projection was came out lower than the previous set of data. So what I'm saying there is that in the Waikato district, the 2020, the medium was actually stronger than what we would usually have seen if you go consistently back to what our medium projections are. And the difference between the current high and that previous medium, I think still reflects that strong migration into the Waikato district, and it's less sensitive to the buffering of the international migration that more strongly affects Waipa and Hamilton, and confirms that the regional or the inter-region migration, the pressures from Auckland and Hamilton are the primary drivers of growth. We also need to remember quite a lot that the relative size of the youthful population in the Waikato district is also higher than in the neighbouring areas. So we do have a relatively strong natural tendency for growth. And again, the migration of younger family groups into our district further supports that. So there's certainly a number of very good indicators that stronger growth is driven by that regional migration and not so affected by that international number.
Thanks, Anton. Vishal, did you want to comment?
sorry, Madam Chair, Anton pretty much covered what I was going to say, but just to add another component to reassure Councillor Lynch. So inaccurate growth forecast is a strategic risk that we've identified as council, and we do have a deep dive report coming to the Audit and Risk Committee on the 16th of September, just to reassure the committee, the Audit and Risk Committee, how we're going to mitigate risk associated with inaccurate growth forecast. And one of those is having Dr. Maggie Hong on board to help us monitor this over time. So just to reassure Councillor Lynch that we do have some controls in place to be able to better report growth over the long run.
Thanks, Vishal. And Mayor Allen.
Yeah, but hang on. Sorry, everybody. I'll turn my... Yeah,
Morning.
okay. Can you hear me? Oh, yeah, okay. There we go. Sorry about that. Doing some other work. It's been great listening to everybody and keep my mouth shut for a while. So really enjoyed that, actually. Yeah, look, Maggie, yeah, look, I liked your report. Very, very good report. And I think for those of us that have been working in this area for some considerable years, these are very, very important, these reports in relation to being able to identify funding for infrastructure going forward in the future. It's been highlighted. And one of my criticisms as a long-standing future-proof partner is that Hamilton have always run at a low. And that's always been an issue as far as I'm concerned. Even though they've been growing flat stick, they've still based their growth projections at a low level. And part of that's driven out around the fact is if you want to move up a level to a medium or higher, you've got to actually identify more funding for more infrastructure. So they're being motivated by the fact that they don't show it, they don't have to fund it, sort of thing. And it's sort of probably left them a little bit short in some places. I was interested to see in your report, Maggie, the difference between medium and high is actually, I'd call it pretty marginal. And for that reason alone, we should be at the high. But more importantly, we've finally got all the partners to be aligned. And I think it's more important now than it's ever been, for the simple fact is part of the Hamilton Waikato Metro plan is around joined up infrastructure. To do that, we need to be all on the same platform. And we can't do it if one's on a different platform to the other. So I support Maggie's report and the recommendations down here for us to adopt the high level. I don't think it affects us immensely. It's just something that, as I've always said, this is a living document, and Maggie will update it along with the university, the statistics within it, as time goes on, as it changes. Just back to what Anton said, as our growth comes out of Auckland and Hamilton largely, and we have our own internal growth, the biggest part of it is people coming into the Waikato from those two large areas.
Thanks, Mayor Allen. Are you wanting to move that recommendation?
Yeah, I'm happy to move the recommendation, yeah.
Right. Thank you. I'll have Carolyn Eyre, Councillor Eyre, sorry. Did you want to speak? So I'll take one last speaker.
No, yeah, just a quick question. Thank you. And a great report, Maggie. Really interesting reading. My observation, post-COVID, I believe that supply and demand of smaller rural blocks, farm cottages, lifestyle blocks, people are wanting to move away from more urban areas. Have you considered that in part of your modelling? Or is it so minimal it's inconsequential? Just interested to know.
Yeah, it's probably a smaller part in the overall sense. Obviously, with the population growth pressures, people, even though they might potentially want to move to a rural area, but it's probably, for most people, is unlikely to happen given the cost of living as well as land prices and stuff.
Thanks, Dr. Hong. Councillor Sedgwick, are you wanting to second this or are you wanting to comment? You're on mute, Councillor.
Bang again. Yes, I am seconding it, and I also wanted to comment that the district plan specifies where people will be able to move to and not move to in very sort of short version comment there. So I'm happy to second.
Okay, thank you. I'll now put the recommendation. All in favour, please raise your hands. Okay, all against, any against, sorry. Okay, moved, carried, sorry. So we'll move on now. Thank you, Dr. Hong, very much for your report.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Thanks.
Yeah. So moving now, please, to page 72, the economic and community development work. Julie, are you still on, waiting patiently? Thanks for your patience. I'll let you talk to this.
Okay, thank you. And through you, Madam Chair, good morning, everybody. I'll take the report that I've written as being read, but would like to highlight some updates since the report was actually submitted. Obviously, since the latest news on COVID, we're keeping a watching brief on our district economy as a result of the latest lockdown, and we're working with some partners. We've been on Zoom meetings over the last few weeks in relation to understanding the impact that this latest lockdown has had for our district, although we are expecting that any impact we see will probably come further down the road as opposed to immediate. But we've been working with some of our partners around what type of programmes, if any, are needed to offer any further support. We did have a business forum of our employers for the Northern District, right down to Huntly, that was due to take place last month, but was cancelled due to COVID. So we'll be touching base with those individuals again to set up a new date, just to let you know that that'll be taking place, and we can let you know on the date that's going to happen. It should have been at Hampton Downs. There's a new operations manager that's been appointed to Tuwaka, so you may be aware that Tuwaka's been going through some big changes in terms of their resourcing and staffing. A new operations manager, Susan Lorenz, has joined. I've only met her on Zoom, but we're looking if we can go into level 2 to have a proper meeting. And the purpose of that is to explore, now that they've got new people in sight, how they can better support our district, because the support's quite minimal at the moment in terms of what they can do. On a personal note, I'm very happy to tell you that we are going to start interviewing for our new economic and community-led development roles. Those positions will be based in the Tuaco office and obviously the Ngaruawahia office, to give us a greater spread across the district in preparation for the growth that's coming our way, and also for significant development opportunities. The funding review that you all heard the other day, it was due to come back to you soon. And the economic and community-led development team are going to be responsible for working with your communities to deliver on those small economic and social projects that they've already identified or are going to identify. And I'll look at bringing a new report to you once that's online, so that we can start talking to you and updating you on the progress of those projects in your communities, and you can see how they're taking shape. So I'll be bringing a new report to SNF once the funding review has been approved by yourselves and the recommendations have been approved by yourselves. Finally, we met with the boards at our workshop that you were all at as well, the chairs of the community boards and some committees. And we've started with the support of our democracy team, pulling together now the presentation for the training, and that's to help those community boards and some of those committees administer and manage the funds that they're going to be responsible for. So we're finalising that presentation today to go to the Funding Review Committee for their approval. And after it's been approved by full council, we'll be going out to all of the committees and the boards to be able to support them in the new way of working for their funding. And that's it. Happy to take any questions now.
Thank you, Julie. Now, has anyone any questions? If you could let me know. Councillor Lynch, please.
Julie, how many applications did you get for community development advisors?
For community development advisors, in total, we got 11 applications, but we did have to go out for both roles a second time. So okay. we had to advertise. So we started advertising about 8 weeks ago. On the closing dates, when that came, the quality of applicants weren't enough for us to be able to be confident in moving forward. So we re-advertised. That closed on Friday, and we're hoping to start interviews next week.
Oh, good decision, Julie. Better to re-advertise. Yeah.
I know. I can't wait.
Councillor Church.
Yeah, no, thank you, Madam Chair. I just think it's good news what's happening in that space. I'm sorry, I wasn't waving. I was more giving a heads up. I should have used a thumbs up. I think it's so I'm really looking forward to the extra input in the North Waikato. So I'm really enthusiastic about it. Sorry, I should have used my emoji rather than
right.
That work.
Nice to get compliments, isn't it, Julie? Okay.
Yeah, it's not often.
Yeah. Oh, well, we appreciate you. Okay, so if there's no other questions, thanks, Julie. We'll move on.
Thank you. Thank you.
Right, well, we're moving now to the finance reports, and the first report's on page 78, the approved counterparty review. Alison, do you have any comment?
No, through you, Madam Chair, I'm happy to take the report as read.
Any questions of Alison? It's for your information. That's all good. All right, we'll move to the next item, the general rate position. If you can talk to that, Alison, please.
Yeah. So at the end of each year, we invariably have spent more or less than what was budgeted. So budgets are an inexact science. What we've been trying to achieve over the last few years is to try and move away from the generation of high general rate surpluses, because that would tell us that we're actually charging our ratepayers too much if that's a continual trend. So we've got some things in our budgets around assumptions around staffing and vacancies and how long it takes you to bring on a new staff member, and that should actually generate some require us not to budget as much from a cost perspective. And we have some efficiency savings that are also budgeted. So the position, pleasingly, this year is much lower than it has been in previous years. So by the time we've looked at the rates that we struck, what we had brought forward from the year before and what has been spent and what needs to be taken through into the following financial year, we have a surplus amount of 35,502. So 35,000. We're suggesting that the council, that the Strategy and Finance Committee recommend to council that that money be set aside in our General Accounting Reserve Fund, so that throughout the year, as operational differences come up through tender processes, etc., that we have those funds to fall back on. In the year prior, we have actually committed some of the General Accounting Reserve Fund becomes a budgeted item in the following year, so that we don't charge as much rates moving forward. So we do have some assumptions around using that General Accounting Reserve Fund in each year of our long-term plan. In terms of carry forwards, the council and committee will recall that we went through a large exercise through the long-term plan to rephase works, which is why some of those historic capital works projects that have been carried forward have diminished so drastically. But pleasingly, at the end of the year, we only had 5.2 million of carry forward budget relating to projects that had not yet been awarded. So that's a significant change. And I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
Thanks, Alison. I have three speakers, Councillor Smith, Church and Sedgwick. Councillor Smith first.
Thank you. Great work, Alison, and I know I've been on your case at times over the years on this issue, so really pleased to see the processes put in place and happy to move the recommendation, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor. Councillor Church, you were next, I think.
Yeah, I guess we're reiterating that. You've taken the words out of my mouth, Councillor Smith. I've got no questions. I think you've done a good job. It's very clear. And I'm happy to second the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Sedgwick.
Oh, well, it seems to be a triumvirate then. Just a question for Alison, please, on the valuation objections. Did we have many, and are they being worked through, and do we have a likely finish time frame?
So through you, Madam Chair, we had in the range of 400 objections in the end, I believe. There is a report going through to Audit and Risk this month that will have more detail on the objections process. The amount of the capital value as part of those objections equates to about $44 million. So it's quite significant. Anecdotally, we know that we have had, properties surrounding the Hamilton boundary that used to be valued at around $500,000 that are now being valued at 3.8. Those objections have been, that particular objection has been looked at and it has come down, but only by 200,000. So we're just working our way through what that might look like. Quotable Value, who undertake the valuation work, they expect to have turned around all of the objections by November.
Lovely, thank you. So yes, considerable amount, more than I actually thought. Thank you.
All right, thanks very much. We have a mover and a seconder, so I'll put the motion. All in favour, please raise your hand. Any against? Carried, thank you. Thanks, Alison. And I'd like our mover and a seconder to move us into public excluded. Thank you. Councillor Thompson and Councillor McAnally, all in favour, raise your hands. Against? Carried. And I'll ask Matt to stop recording. So we'll just have a brief pause. Councillor Church, did you have something to say? No. Okay, so we'll just